Hello there, Hidden Hermit. Here today I'm talking about Aries, and this is my Aries setup. Everything's quite red. I've got some red hot cinnamon incense burning, which is rather nice. I've got an array of stones. I've got a lovely bit of emerald, some hematite, a bloodstone. You can't really see how awesome that is in this light, but hey, and some red jasper. All these stones are associated with Aries and the month of April. So yeah, here's Aries looking rather awesome with his horns. There's the glyph of Aries, again, horns. And Aries is an ancient constellation. Before it became the constellation that we knew today, it was referred to by the Euphratian astrologers as the constellation of Gam, which was a huge sickle in the sky, and it was really important to them because it marked the point where the sun crossed the celestial equator, which is what we now call the vernal equinox. The Chinese called it the dog, and it was a part of a much larger constellation called the White Dragon, and the Egyptians had it as the head of a goose. There were some of the other constellations which the stars that Aries makes up formed. However, many cultures, Persian cultures, the Babylonians, the Sumerians, they all associated it with a sheep or a ram. Nobody really knows why. It's quite possible that it's because back in the ancient world, sheep, lambs and rams were sacrificed to the gods quite a lot. And you certainly do get a sense that you're getting that spring vibe from Aries the ram, because, cattle are obviously frolicking around at this time of year, making babies, etc, etc. However, we know why the constellation is now called Aries. It's thanks to the Romans, going back to the Greek myths. So Ovid tells the tale of Phrixus. Phrixus fled on the back of a ram with his sister Hele to escape their nasty stepmother Ino. Now, personally, I would have chosen a horse or a speedboat, because when they were escaping, his sister Hele fell into the sea and unfortunately perished. Once Phrixus got to his destination, he slaughtered the lamb. There you go, there's that sacrificial thing going on again, and he hung his fleece in the grove of Aries, Aries being the Greek god of war. The fleece promptly turned into gold and became the object of the quest that Jason and the Argonauts did all their trials for, and yes, they eventually got that golden fleece. And so the Romans, with their pilfering of Greek culture, they didn't like to change much. They added stuff, but they didn't like to change much. So Aries became the name of the constellation that marked the beginning of the astrological year. So Aries, the whole constellation, is indeed a fire sign. It is in fact the cardinal fire sign, meaning it starts at the beginning of the month. So you're going to get a lot of initiation, you're going to get a lot of new ideas, which is attributes to Aries in itself. And we, as tarot readers, obviously associate fire with the suit of wands. Here are a few wand cards. There's the Waite Smith. We're going to look at the Night Sun as well. The triangle of fire. You've got fire. It's all the fire going on. We're going to look at the Hermetic Tarot as well. And all these aces, they're very similar, aren't they? It's just fire in its purest form. And here's the Crowler's Top Deck. Again, the same. It's a massive wand. It's lots of action. Fire. Which is awesome. Yep, like I say, it's a cardinal fire sign, so it starts at the beginning of the month. Aries normally goes from the 20th or the 21st of March until the 19th or the 20th of April. At the moment, it starts on the 20th of March. I think in 2022 will be the next time that it starts on the 21st of March. Now, if you're born with Aries in your sign, you're the go-getter. Some of the positive words associated with Aries are things like enthusiasm, inspiring, exhilarating. They've got lots of energy. They're intrepid, passionate, courageous. They can be unconventional, individualistic. They've got a lot of initiative. They're ardent. They're decisive. They make decisions quickly. They're also prone to a lot of extremes. you know, basically they're awesome. Some of the more negative aspects is they can be self-centered, inconsiderate. They're intent on doing things their own way. They can take risks rather sometimes to their detriment. They break rules, again, to their detriment. They lack foresight. They lack diligence. They can be restless. Their impatience is legendary. They can be insensitive, egocentric, self-absorbed. Their tempers are usually quite short. They have strong opinions, and they don't care how they articulate those opinions, and they can be impolite. These are some of the general traits related to someone born with the sun in Aries, and those traits on a lesser level can be attributed to those who had their moon in Aries. When they're born, the moon was transverse in the sign of Aries. And again, if Aries is your ascendant, meaning the constellation that's rising in the east as you're born, you can again have these attributes sort of tagged onto you. And if you have it in the ascendant, you may very well be interested in how you look and how you sort of project yourself to the world. So the card associated with Aries in the tarot in the major arcana is the Emperor, and the Emperor really is Aries personified. We've got the Waite Smith image here, and Aries is all over the place. I mean, look at him. He's dressed in red. He's got ram's heads on his throne, 4 of them, in fact, and 4 being quite a special number because this is number 4. But yeah, all those attributes that I just said about Aries can also be transferred onto the Emperor. The Emperor is a leader. He's not just a leader of a household or a kingdom. He has an empire, so many kingdoms, and he's built it through hard work and through sheer willpower. There's also an element of, you've got this sort of religious iconography. He's got a scepter there, so he may even feel that it is his divine right to rule. And, you know, all power to him, really. All power to him. Let's look at some of the other emperors. Here's the Night Sun. Again, you've got the ram's heads going on there. You've got Aries up in the corner. You've got that scepter again, so he has that sort of creative, spiritual side. But again, it may very well be a case of he believes it's his right. It's his right to be the ruler. Excuse me. Now, a lot of people I've heard are a bit wary of the Emperor. They find him a disciplinarian. They find him kind of harsh. He's a father figure as well, because he is the father of the civilization, if you like. I think that's a little bit ill-informed, I think. I think the Emperor is generally on your side. He tends to rule with a fair hand. He tends to weigh up options. Yes, he can be rash and he can take risks, but he's got to his station through his attributes, if you like. So, yeah, he is definitely a father figure. He's definitely a male figure as well. Aries is a masculine, positive sign. And like I say, he embodies those attributes quite nicely. Let's look at the Hermetic Tarot. Excuse me while I clear my throat. Woohoo! And yep, you've got the same sort of thing going on here. You've got this creative divine will coming out of the sky in these strange little blob things. He again has a scepter. You've got all the ram's heads going on here. You've also got some interesting other things going on. There's the eagle down here. The eagle is also associated with the month of April and the sign of Aries. You have a bee as well. I'm not sure what the bee means, but, you know, excuse me. The Hermetic Tarot does have a lot of symbolism. It throws a lot of stuff at you that I don't really get. But hey, it is beautiful. And here you have the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, proper title of it, the Sun of the Morning. Now, I think this probably relates to the fact that Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. It's the morning sign. It starts off the astrological year, and he is male. So yeah, it's a very striking image. The top deck is very interesting because it kind of apes the image you see in the Marseille decks, in the really early tarot decks. He is indeed facing to his left, which may symbolize that he does rely on his intuition quite a lot to make his decisions. Or, you know, he goes with his gut a lot. He takes his risks because he has that sort of pure willpower. Again, you have the eagle on the shield. You even have a lamb down here. And interestingly, Aries, because it's been associated with sheep and lambs for thousands and thousands of years, when Christianity was on the rise, they tried to hijack the image of the ram and put it into a Christian context. They first tried to associate Aries with the ram of Abraham, which I know very little about, and then they tried to associate it with the sacrificial lamb, which is of course Jesus, who was crucified around this time of year. If I go back to the night sun, in fact, the emperor does have a kind of Western Jesus vibe going about him. Kind of implies that the emperor is willing to sacrifice everything for his cause, which, well, it's very noble of him, but then again, he does have this regal air about him. I think I get the Jesus vibe because of the crown of thorns, mostly. If you can see that, yeah. But, you know, he's bearded. I mean, Jesus was actually an Arab, I'm sure, but Western art has depicted him as this bearded fella like this. And yeah, so Jesus was apparently crucified around about April time. Scholars seem to believe it was between the 3rd and the 7th of April. So the Christians did try and hijack Aries to relate it to Christianity. But yeah, another thing I quite like about the Emperor is it kind of embodies that idea that it's lonely at the top. He is at the top of this game. He can't go any higher unless he becomes a god, if you like. And he may feel a little bit isolated up there. Bless him, poor emperor. So the sign of Aries is also ruled by the planet Mars. Now, Mars was the Roman god of war, so you have Ares, the Greek god of war, and Mars, the Roman god of war. So there's a lot of war, there's a lot of aggression, there's a lot of passion going on here, and this image from the Zodiac Oracle deck is cracking. You've got that sort of shield and spear, and the glyph sometimes is referred to as a shield and spear, but let's face it, it's probably an erect penis. I didn't say that, honest. And you've got this big red sun behind him. Mars is associated with tarot number 16, which is the Tower. Now, the Tower incites fear in a lot of people, and I'll be honest, I am one of them. If the Tower comes up in a spread, I'm like, oh no, it's the Tower. But the Tower as an archetypal image has a lot of associations, and we're going to go back to the Old Testament as well. The Tower of Babel is probably the first thing that comes to mind when people really meditate on the card. The Tower of Babel was built by Nimrod in an attempt to reach heaven. He wanted to build a structure that would actually take him to God. And God didn't like this at all, and sent down his wrath to destroy it. And thus the destruction caused everybody to speak different languages, and nobody understood each other anymore. So you do have this image of the Tower. Now, there are a lot of interesting things going on in the Tower. First of all, there are people that are flying out, and they obviously seem to be in a bit of distress. This lightning bolt is just taken off the top, but interestingly, the Tower doesn't have any doors. So it's quite possible these people have been imprisoned in some way. So the Tower is actually liberating them in some sense. The Tower also, in early ancient times, the biggest, tallest buildings were indeed churches, temples, places of worship. So you still got that sense that people are trying to get closer to the divine. The divine here is releasing these people, or even, I mean, yeah, the Tower is associated with destruction or sudden change. However, as with all tarot cards, it does have positive aspects too. Thus being sudden change to bring around something good to happen. Maybe somebody or yourself are stuck in a rut and you need to change things up, and the Tower will do that with sudden, violent change. The Tower itself is also it's associated with Mars, indeed, and Mars is a warrior. So the towers can very often be lookouts or fortifications. They could be a place of refuge. And if we look at some of the other cards, in fact, I'm going to go to the Hermetic first. And this is called the Blasted Tower. So you've got a very similar image to the Waitsmith. You've got this bolt from the blue, as it were, bringing about massive change. And if we were to compare that to the Night Sun, Here, you've got the lightning in the background, but there doesn't appear to be a great deal of destruction going on. People are still falling out, and you've got this kind of Lovecraftian entity spilling out of it, which is kind of cool. I do love the Night Sun Tower, even. I do love the Night Sun. That was a bit of a Freudian slip. I do love the Night Sun Tarot, but the tower in particular, it's just an awesome, awesome image. And if we were to look at Tot, again, there's no apparent destruction. You've still got people flying out, but you've got a dove of peace over here as well, which possibly suggests that once this abrupt change has happened, then things are going to get better. Again, another awesome, awesome image. The art obviously done by Lady Frida Harris. It's just so striking. It does fill you with fear a little bit. Now, interestingly, going back to the Hermetic Tarot, the Golden Dawn title is the Lord of the Hosts of the Mighty. There are some interesting things that happened in the history of the tarot, of the Tower cards. It was originally called the House of Fire. It was mistranslated into French. I can't actually remember. It was Maison. I can't remember, but it was mistranslated, and it was then called the House of God. So again, you're going back to this idea that we're trying to reach a divine, and the divine's kind of striking back. But we're going to see the associations of the tower in a little bit. In fact, about nowish. So I'm going to put Mars, the tower, to one side. So far, let me just pull some cards back out. Excuse my arm. Bring back some emperors. We'll bring back some towers. So the other cards associated with Aries in the tarot, and we're talking about decans now. So let's look at the Two of Wands. The Two of Wands rules 0 to 10 degrees Aries, which is usually the 20th or the 21st of March to the 30th or to the 30th of March or the 1st of April. And this is a cracking image. This is a cracking image. We'll just go through the cards very quickly. So there's the Waitsmith, a guy holding the world in his hands, between two wands. The Night Sun has a female figure who's tiptoeing on stilts through some sort of a red fiery pond. There is a flower growing down there, and that's important because she's looking down to it. This is a spark of an idea, I believe. The Hermetic is this hand is very similar to the Ace, and in fact the Ace and the Two, they share a lot of attributes in that you have this idea, you have this creative spark, this will that's starting, that's forming in your head and in your heart. So yeah, the image is very strong because you've got the hand holding the wands. And again, you've got Aries up there. And the fire, very well. You've got Mars down here as well. Mars and Aries. It's very, very clever imagery. And the Tot is very, very much the same. And you have these two batons, these two wands. You've got Aries down here. You've got Mars up there. And the Hermetic and the Tot, they share the same attributes called Lord of Dominion and Dominion. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. Because, going back to the Night Sun, the Two of Wands is associated with both Mars and Aries, which are the two cards that we've been talking about here. Let me just move the hematite. Let's get a little bit of a flow going. So, Aries and Mars form the attributes of the Two of Wands. Now, if the Emperor and the Tower come up in a reading, in a spread, you may be tempted to go down the road of, well, you know, there's going to be a masculine powerful influence that's going to cause destruction, or indeed destruction's going to happen and then a masculine influence is going to take control. Of course, you know, in readings it's all down to your interpretation. However, Mars and Aries get on really, really well. It's where Mars is happy in Aries, Aries is happy to have Mars. So we're going to be looking at the positive attributes to inform what the Two of Wands means. Now, I find it quite interesting that you have this figure, and he is male. He could very well be female, and I can come on to the gender aspects in just a moment. But he may very well be standing on a tower. He's looking out from his tower. The tower at this point is a lookout. It's a refuge and a lookout, and he's looking out and he's planning stuff. A lot of people think because he's got this globe in his hands that he's planning world domination, which is where you get that idea of dominion here. And if we were to look at the night sun, you get a very similar sort of thing going on. Aries, the tower, Mars and Aries, and yeah, so she's got her crutch. She's towering above and looking down at this idea that's sprouting from this pool of creativity. It's excellent. I love these images, and the association of Mars and Aries flowing through is brilliant. I love it. I love it. So moving on, and this at this point I'm going to throw all my cards around and lose everything, but that's fine. That's fine. In fact, I'm going to need the Emperor because he is, of course, Aries. So moving on to the Three of Wands, and it's a very similar image in a lot of ways. You have a guy who's looking out. Now the three's moving on from the two in that he's had these ideas in the two, he's making these plans and he's putting them into action now. He's looking out from some sort of vantage point, and you can see these ships. And I believe that means his ideas, he's putting them forth into the world. He's putting them into action. He's manifesting these things. And the Three of Wands, yep, again, it's associated with creativity and skill, as the Wands are. It's about self-expression, growth, completion and manifestation. And that growth comes from... Let me just bring out the night sun, just so we know where we are. The sun in Aries. So if we were to bring out the sun card, put the three over there. So this is how the attributes to the Three of Wands are formed. You have the Emperor of Aries, and you have the sun going on here, which is really, really nice. The sun is associated with Leo as well. And Leo and Aries, they tend to get on quite well. They can make really good teams, really good couples. They can be a force to be reckoned with. They will clash heads every now and then, as do Aries and as do Rams and Lions. But again, they make good teams. So the sun here is also about completion, abundance, and happiness. And you have this manifestation going on in the three, and it's very, very clever, I think. Again, he's got his red robe, and the colour scheme is very, very fiery as well. If we were to look at the Hermetic Tarot, again, you've got the sun in Aries up there. You've got the sun very prominent at the top there, and you've got this hand again. You've got Aries down here, Aries, sun, Aries. It keeps reminding you of the associations, and that's how we get to these images. The top deck, very simple, but again, you have that fiery idea. The top deck calls it virtual. The Hermetic calls it Lord of Established Strength. The sun is giving the Emperor strength here. Aries and the sun, again, they get on very, very well. The sun is what's known as being exalted in Aries. So it's a very, very positive card. And if it comes up in a reading at any time ever, then everybody should be happy. Okay, right, throwing more cards around. The sun can go for a walk. I'm going to need to hold on to these threes and twos. Let's look at the four. Oh, by the way, the three is associated with the second decan of Aries, which is 10 degrees to 20 degrees Aries, which is usually from about the 31st of March or the 1st of April till the 10th to the 11th of April. So that's when this card is associated. Moving on to the four, I may as well talk about the dates. It's the third decan of Aries, so from 20 to 30 degrees Aries, which is roughly the 10th to the 11th of April to the 20th to the 21st of April. And this is a cracking image. It's a lovely image. You get a sense of a party going on here. And if we were to look at the night sun, here we discover that Venus and Aries are joining up here. And this is one of those cards where these associations are amazing. So Venus is ruled by the Empress. Now the Empress actually precedes the Emperor. And finally, this Emperor, who's been very lonely at the top, he gets his pal, his buddy, his consort, if you like, his wife, his equal in many, many ways, because the Empress is indeed the mother figure of the major arcana. And as you can see here, she is definitely Venus. Now, if I was to bring out the Night Sun ones, here's the Night Sun Empress. Very, very empressy. She has her divine scepter there, her royal scepter. And if I was to get out the Emperor, the Night Sun Emperor, of course I've lost him. Where has he gone? Oh, he's under here, isn't he? So yeah, Venus in Aries. Now Venus isn't particularly comfortable in Aries, but wherever Venus goes, she brings happiness, abundance, and that sort of nurturing vibe, if you like. In the Night Sun, four of wands, you've got that heart, the heart that represents Venus, and it's been fortified by the wands there. It's a very striking image that required a lot of meditation on my part to sort of get through. But if I looked at the whole deck, the Night Sun in particular, the Empress, the Emperor, this sort of bonding, and it kind of brings me to the lovers of the Night Sun, where indeed you get the Empress and the Emperor, and they're being counselled by either the Hierophant or the Hermit, although once I examine these cards a little bit more, I'm starting to think that the Hierophant and the Hermit are the same person. But that's a story for another time. But so, yeah, you got this image of the lovers, you get this idea that the Empress and the Emperor are very much together, and it brings forth happiness. And if I was to go back to the Waite Smith, there you go. So that's what's forming the four of wands there. This party, this celebration, it could very well be a celebratory wedding. It could just be, I mean, the four of wands is associated with success, comfort, prosperity, reaping the rewards that you set into motion in the three. The idea you had in the two, you put into motion in the three, and it's all come around in the four. And again, I just love these. I just love this flow here of the Empress and the Emperor. Okay, so if we're thinking about the decans again, let's look at the four actually. So the Hermetic one is called Lord of Perfectic Work, which kind of gives you that idea of, again, the two, you have the idea, the three, you put it into motion, and the four, it's come around and it's bringing its blessings, if you like. The top deck calls it completion. So there you have that idea already, and it's a nice little neat package you get in the Aries and in the three decans of Aries. The other thing that we'll probably need to mention, so if I bring back all the decans of Aries, of course I'm going to have lost the two now, haven't I? Two of wands, where are you? There you are. Now if you look at these cards in a whole, they tell their own little story. You get that idea, you get that put it into motion, and you get that completion. But if you look at the colour schemes, it's all very, very similar. Now the other cards associated with Aries, and indeed the decans, the first and second decans, so this starts in March, and the three finishes up at about the 10th of April. The court card that's associated with them is the Queen of Wands, and the Queen of Wands is associated with these two. Now the Queen of Wands is very much a baby empress in a lot of ways. She's a cracking, I mean, I just love the Night Sun Queen of Wands. Look at her. She's formidable, and she represents the watery part of fire. The Queen of Wands, she's very kindly and generous. She has that emotive part about her, the watery part about her, but she can be very impatient and combative if she's faced with opposition. And you do indeed get this idea of a cat as well in both these. She has a lion attached to her, to whatever she's wearing, and you get this nice little black cat with the Queen of Wands and the Waite Smith. So they're attached to the decans from the 2 and the 3. The card associated with the decan, the third decan, the 4 of Wands, is the King of Pentacles, which I find a little bit strange, to be perfectly honest. If it was up to me, if I was designing the deck, I would probably associate the Knight of Wands with all three of these decans. But because there are only 16 court cards and we got to spread them over 36 divisions, there's going to be some cards that have less, some cards that have more. The Queen of Wands makes sense to me. The King of Pentacles is here, and if I was to bring out some of the other King of Pentacles cards, so if we look at the King of Pentacles from the Hermetic, you see this guy, and he's on some sort of chariot with a bull. Coriolis top deck likes to call the kings the princes, and you've got that ball again because the third decan is just coming up to when Taurus takes over the astrological chart, so it's kind of being prepared for that. Now, interestingly, the King of Pentacles is an earthly thing. He represents the airy part of Earth, so he's putting a lot of thought and consideration into his material gain. It does make him kind of dull sometimes and lacking in emotion, but it doesn't matter because the third decan is ruled by Venus, which is very emotive. So that kind of balances that out a bit, I think. Let's look at another look at the King of Pentacles here. So yeah, preparing us all for Taurus, because we all need preparation for Taurus. But yeah, so they're all the cards that are associated with Aries. You have the Emperor. Let's get rid of the Empress. She can make more of a impact later on in the astrological year. So yeah, you have the Emperor, you have Mars, and you have these three cards here, plus the Queen of Wands and the King of Pentacles. I think that these associations, the way you have Aries and Mars in the Dominion card, the way you have the Sun and Aries in the Three of Wands, and the way you have Venus and Aries to bring about this celebration, it makes perfect sense to me. It's very, very clever system, and we're going to be exploring that in subsequent videos. So I hope you've enjoyed Aries. It's always good to have an Aries in your life. They can be very handy. They can be very enthusiastic. They can bring about a lot of change, and it's nice to have a warrior on your side as well. So yeah, that's Aries. Thank you very much for watching. My cinnamon, oh no, it's still alive. There's still a bit of fire there, but that means it's time to go. So thank you very much.